In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use the lambda function make arrays to generate a deck of cards in Google Sheets. As you can see in our sample sheet across the top here, we have generated a deck of cards by suit, and then we've placed them into a single column, as you can see here. And then what's a deck of cards without shuffling them? So then we'll go through a couple of different practices for randomizing your deck of cards. So as a part of all of this, we'll use the make array lambda function, we'll use the two column functions, we'll use cell, index, query, sort, rand array, count a, and let. And we'll blend it all together to make this card sorting formula. To play along, you can grab the starter sheet in the link in the description below or up above as it appears around about now. Let's get started. So you should have your starter sheet that looks a little bit like this. Over on the left hand side, I've put some card emojis in with the heart, diamond, spades and clubs. So all I did there was grab the @ symbol, scroll down and selected the emojis button here. Emojis list came up and I just typed in hearts, diamonds, spades and clubs. And you can see that they appear there. All right, let's go back out of that and delete that. And of course, I just manually added in the numbers. Okay, let's zoom back in again so we can see what's going on. The first thing we need to do is make a column with each suit joining the starter set of the ace, king, queen, jack, 10 through to 2 with the suit itself. So we're going to do this with the make array lambda function here. So let me just show you how it works at the basic level. So let's put in equals here and type in make array, and that's going to require a row. So how many rows do we want? So it's going to be this 13 rows. Now we could by right say use the count a function here and then drag it all the way down here to get, drag it all the way down to the bottom and get a count if we've got a dynamic range. But we know that we're only ever going to have 13 rows. So let's hard code this in here with a 13 rows. And again, the same with our suits. We know there's only 4 suits in a deck of cards, so we're going to hard code that as 4 columns. Next, we're going to use the lambda function. Now, if we look down here, a lambda function needs to include a row index, a column index, and then a formula expression here. So what we're going to do is type in lambda. And inside that, what do we need first? We need our row index. So I'll just say row ID X for index, and then col underscore ID X. Great. So now we need our formula expression. To help you understand what's going on here, let's just put in the row number and the column number as text so you can see how it's all working. So let's say we want our row first. So we'll say row underscore index, and then we'll split it by a space. So put ampersand in here, double quotation mark, space, double quotation mark, ampersand, col underscore index. Close that bracket to close the lambda function, close the bracket for the make array or the parenthesis for the make array. Let's hit enter and see what happens. Cool, so you can see across the top we've got our rows 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 to the 13 down. Now of course this isn't looking like this. We need to combine some values here. So how do we go about using these numbers to grab these values here? So as the make array iterates through each one of these index numbers, it's providing a value 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way to 13 down, and 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way across. We can take advantage of these values to find the index inside a cell here based on our current range, and then grab the contents from the cell as it iterates through each one of the ranges. So to do that, we can use 2 functions. The first one, let's have a look over here. The first one is, let's actually put this here, is the cell. And the cell has a couple of info types. We can grab the address of the cell. So that would, if I selected A2 here, that would respond with A2. But we actually want the content of the cell. So if I put in double quotation marks here, and my info type is content, let's see, content. I think it is, with an S here, and then I select my reference, which is going to be this reference here, and you can already see in the hint that it's going to come up with that lovely little heart. And then if I drag this all the way down, I've got that range there. So we can also apply this cell to a range, and it's going to grab the first value in the range. If I said A to, A5, that's just going to get us the first value in this range. Let me delete this so you can see. And it'll always grab the top left value in the range. This is useful for us because then we can use the index here, and then in the index we can grab the row offset. If I offset this then by 2, it should then give us diamond now. And indeed it gives us diamond because it's the second one down in the index of the range. So we can make use of this and replace this number value here by the row index here. So let's move this cell index into our make array formula. Okay, so the first one that we want is we will grab cell, and then we want to grab inside the cell, what do we want? The contents, and then we're going to grab index, and here we have A2 to A5, and we're going to close that and close the contents. So that's this value here is going to create our columns. So then if we're creating columns, then our row offset is going to be our col underscore index. And let's just generate that quickly to see what happens. I'll delete this over here. Cool. So we've got our col index. It's got our hearts down here for 13, our diamonds, spades, and clubs. Nice. All right. Abutting next to that cell, we want to put in an and to join together our value here as well of the card. So we're going to do the same thing again, but we're going to use this column B, that's A through to 2 values. Now, see if you can jump ahead and try and do it. So you can pause the video now, try and complete this, and then come back and then follow along. Make sure you got it all correct. And I'm going to get started now. So next we need to add in the cell. Then argument is contents. Well, info type is contents. And then comma. Then we want our index. And that's going to be this range here. Now, also in our contents too, we need our offset. And this time around, it's going to be row underscore index. And tab. So we've got all our deck of cards in 4 columns by 13 rows. Now, of course, we could just manually add this in and join things together and copy it in. It probably wouldn't take as long for us to figure out this formula, but we are masters of the formula and we want to show our mastery with these awesome complex formulas. This will come in handy when you have dynamic data that you want to put in, and it will generate this matrix for you. Okay, so where was I? Not babbling. All right, so our next task is we want to combine all this into a single column. So how do we go about that? Now, I've got a tutorial on this that you can find the link in the description below, but basically we can use the toCol function here. This takes array or range. So I'm going to select this entire array of ranges here and close it and hit tab. And now we've got all 52 cards here. Now, you might not be happy to see all the aces together, all the kings together, all the queens together, and so on and so forth. What if you want to stack your cards by their column first? Well, that's no worries. We can go in here. There's a second value here called ignore. Ironically, we're also going to ignore that. And then we've got another parameter here called scan by column. So do you want to scan by column first, or generate the column first and then put the next column under the next one, and so on and so forth? Yes, we do. So we're going to say true and hit tab. Now you can see everything is stacked on top of each other. Hearts, aces, spades, and club dubs. Cool bananas. So we've got this formula. It looks very simple, but we don't want to waste space in our spreadsheet by having staging sections in our sheet tab. We want to put it all together, and honestly, we are going to look much cooler if we put it into one massive formula. So let's just go ahead and do that now. All we're going to do here is we are going to select everything up to just before the equal sign here and hit Control C to copy. And where we have this range here, we're just going to select it and hit Control V to paste and hit Tab. Now we've got the entire formula in here. So if I were to delete this, nothing happens because we've got everything in this one formula because we're amazing. Good job, team. All right, so what's a deck of cards without being able to shuffle them? Let's grab this deck of cards here. I'm going to hit Control C to copy them. I'm going to put them over and Control V or Control Shift V paste as value, so it removes the formula from it. It just gives us the raw data here. And then I'm going to select this range. So I'm going to hit Control Shift down arrow to select the entire data range of our deck of cards. Then what I can do is go up to Data, and I can click on Randomize Range here. And that will randomize range every time you click on that button. If I click on here, do some other work, it won't dynamically change, which is probably a good thing. It'll stay static once you've clicked that randomize range once. Alternatively, we can right click on this range and go over to our View More Cell Actions and click on Randomize Range. And again, we've randomized range one more time. Weirdly, that came up with 7. That's how randomness works, I'm afraid. If we hit it again, perhaps 7 won't appear, and as we can see, it hasn't, which is cool. Now, what if we wanted to dynamically randomize our range? So just imagine us constantly shuffling our deck every time we carry out an action. Well, let me show you how this works. To do this, we're going to use 4 new functions here. Our primary function to create this is going to be the RANDARRAY function, and that's been around in Google Sheets for quite some time. But let's see how the RANDARRAY function works. Let's go equals RANDARRAY and array, this one here, and it returns a grid of random numbers. Basically what we did when we were making our MakeArray earlier, but as you can see, MakeArray can do much cooler stuff. And RANDARRAY asks us how many rows we want and how many columns that we want. So let's say, for example, we want 52 rows. And how many columns do we want? We just want the one. And that's going to create a random array of numbers like this all the way through to the bottom. And that's going to generate a random list of numbers for 52 rows. Cool. So instead of dynamically stating 52, because we can't mentally do the maths of 4 times 13, we are going to put in our range first. So here we're going to say, instead of this value, we're going to say count A. And then we're going to grab this range from column I all the way down, head down to the bottom here, and then close it. Now, this column is also optional, so we can leave that out, and that will do the exactly same thing. So it's done the count of the range that we've selected. Lovely. So we're kind of there. We've got this sort of randomness going on in these numbers, but how's that going to help us shuffle our deck of cards? Well, what we're going to do is create an array out of this. So what I might do now is just grab this here for the time being. Let's just move over to Q and R because we're going to need 2 columns for a bit. So we can create an array using our curly braces here, and we can put our first array in as this array set here for the time being. We'll put it in, and then we can put in our random formula here. And that's going to give us our list of all our cards, and all those cards now have been assigned a random number on the right here, or a random float on the right here. So now to randomize, what we could do is use the sort function to sort the values by what column? Column 2, this random column here. So how do we want to sort it? And is ascending, is descending, doesn't really matter, but we'll say true. And we'll hit tab. So now this column here is now randomized. Great. Now, keep in mind this is dynamic, so if I do something here and just say hi, for example, note on this Q and R and even on this column M here, things are going to change. So that's one of the pitfalls of using a formula for this, because it'll always change dynamically. All right, so we've randomized our values here, but we don't want to see these numbers here. So we need to hide them somehow. And one of the easiest ways to do that is using the query function. So we can say query here. And query takes a data set. So this is going to be a matrix of data, and that matrix or range of data is going to be a sorted matrix here. So it's cool, we've got a data, and then it's going to ask us what our query is. So our query is going to be, say, select. What column do we want to select? Well, we only want to select column 1. So to display in our query. Well, we only want to select column 1 to display in our query. So we'll say col 1. And that will now only display column 1. Now we don't want query to guess if we've got a header or not. We want to be particular about the headers that we have, and we don't want any, so we're going to set our header to 0 headers and then close our query here and see what happens. So now we've still got our random set of data here, which is fantastic, but that messy, ugly random list here is now gone. So let's just copy this, Control C, and delete this one, and Control V into column M. We'll delete that one too. All right, cool. Now, we really just want to show off now and combine our dynamic randomized range here with our single column of all our cards formula as well. So let's put those two together. And we're going to do something a bit weird here. Now, before we do that, if you notice, in our query, we have 2 calls to a range here. And these calls, if we're going to combine everything together, would by rights be that big formula to generate this in both those locations. However, Google has a new shorthand called the let function that allows us to create a variable and then reference that variable in these 2 sections. So we're going to do that. So let me introduce you, let me introduce you to let. All right, let. Let's open up the function here. And let requires a name. So what name are we going to give let? And let's just open things up a little bit better for us to see. We're going to make a multi-line function here for tidiness. So I'm going to hit Control Enter and go down a bit, and maybe space here. Nice. And what are we going to call our name? And the good convention here is to keep things lowercase. And I'm going to call this deck. It's also optimal to not copy any of the current existing formulas as well. So call that one deck. We know that's not going to exist. And then it's going to say the value expression. So what's our value expression? Just tabbed out of there for the time being. And we're going to go back to this one here. And we're going to copy this. Minus the equal sign at the start. So Control C. And we will go to a new line. Control Enter and hit Control V. And then we'll go make sure that last parenthesis is down the bottom here. Cool. And now we have one final thing to do, and that's to put in our formula expression. So I'm going to hit Tab for the time being. And because it will now show nothing because there's no formula expression, but that won't last long, we're going to go into our query here, grab our query, hit Control C, head back over, and as our last argument for our let, hit Control V and then Tab. And behold, just like the magicians of old, we have created this marvel of a formula. Well done. So now you should be able to use this. To shuffle your deck dynamically at any time. Keep in mind that this is going to happen dynamically. Again, if I do something in a cell, these values are going to change because this is a dynamic formula. You will need to copy this and paste this as values only to make sure that it doesn't change if you don't want it to change. One final thing that I have created as part of my name ranges pack that you can find in the link in the description below is I've already generated a custom randomized range function to make formulas a little bit easier. So I could say randomized columns here, and I could select our single column, or I could either copy and paste in our larger formula and close the brackets, and it generates it for us quite simply, and it saves us a bunch of time. And if another user from your team comes in and sees the randomized column, they can see at a glance what it is. So if you want to grab that along with a growing list of other named functions, check out that link in the description below. I hope you enjoyed building a deck of cards in Google Sheets and got a bit of an understanding how to use MAKEARRAY to generate data in a matrix. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more tutorials like this, subscribe. Until next time.